Good evening, gentle and lady men. It has been some time. I won't bore you with excuses and explanations, but it's good to be back to filming once again. Today I want to show you an improved method of making your own filters. You may remember it's been some months ago now. Actually, it's been almost a year ago now since I've shown you my method of rolling your own filters. And since that time, through experimentation, and I've discovered a slightly better way of making these, than making them more effective. So I'm going to show you that today. And what we wind up with is this right here. Instead of rolling it up into a straight cylinder, I've learned since through just playing around, experimenting, how to roll it in an alternative method that provides still a good draw, but gives you good particle filtration. And most importantly, of course, it keeps moisture out of your stem, at least much more so than... I don't always filter, by the way. I do filter when I smoke aromatics, of which, as you know, I don't smoke very often, but when I do, I generally smoke them filtered. But it's not always about the tobacco. So we pick on aromatics a lot, but it's not just the tobacco. It also has to do with the moisture in the air. That moisture in the air in your pipe is also trying to escape heat. Just like if you've ever watched a tutorial on how to cook a steak, they'll tell you when you flip it, the heat, moisture runs away from heat. You know, or you hear that in any other illustration. Same thing, any moisture down in here just from the air, especially if you live in a humid environment like I do, will try to escape the heat. Sometimes, even when I smoke this, this bone dry straight Izmir, and yes, occasionally I do smoke straight Izmir. I may be crazy, but I do. Even this dry tobacco, you're going to get some moisture sometimes. So it may not be an aromatic that calls for a filter. But enough rambling about that. If you do want to filter, here's a good way to save a little bit of money. And again, as I said in the previous video, it's not about being cheap. It's just when you smoke as many times as I do, you don't want to have to... it would cost me $100 a week to buy filters. Anyway, I'm gonna show you this method today. It works better than the method I showed you before. So how we do that? We've got our 2-inch. That's 5.08 centimeters. Remember, an inch is standardized as 2.54 centimeters. So there's a simple conversion for you if you don't like the old imperial measurements. What we're going to do, and I'm going to use millimeters for this. Americans are familiar with that. If you do any shooting, we're used to dealing with millimeters. So I'm going to say about 14 millimeters right here. Americans like that. You may well know the Americans refer to the 8.8 Flugzeugabwehrkanone as the German 88, whereas the Germans, of course, referred to it as the 8.8 centimeter cannon. Anyway, at 14 millimeters, we're going to fold it over again the second time, and then we're going to fold it a third time. And then we wrap around those folds. There's my son. His sister's made him unhappy about something. He'll be my chorus choir for the video. Anyway, there. And now we fold back around in the reverse direction around the whole thing, and you can already see what this is forming. It works better if you can do it correctly. And we roll it up the rest of the way from there. Now what we've got is this, just as I showed you before. Plenty of particle filtration. We'll get plenty of moisture, and as I mentioned before, I like to leave it a little bit coned out. I'm a big proponent of surface area. That little bit of coning out, in my opinion, helps absorb moisture better. And we stick it in our pipe, into our Roma Galleria stem here. And there we go. And remember, this is about 1/4 of an inch shorter than a standard filter for this Roma Galleria pipe, because it's not designed to be used with a filter. But you use beater briars. This is a $40 cheap beater briar. It's still built of a high quality, good thick chamber walls and all that stuff. you use these for smoking your aromatics in. You don't want to gum up your more expensive pipes. So, but you will want to filter them. And a standard filter, as I mentioned before, is too long and gets burned at the chamber, and you wind up smoking paper even before you get to the bottom of the bowl sometimes. So that's a little bit shorter. This is about a 1/4 inch shorter than a standard paper filter. Don't forget that. But that's what I cut it to, 2.54 centimeters, or times 2, 5.08 centimeters, or 2 inches. So there you have it. A simple, quick, easy way. And again, I make these out of the 3x5 writing pads from Amazon. They're easy to find. They're about $12 a dozen now, or $14 a dozen for those pads, but there's 100 sheets in each one, so you get a lot of filters out of that. Try that out. See if it works for you. Let me know if it works for you. I know what you're saying too with all this fumbling around. Preacher, you need to start editing your videos better. But I just use iMovie. That's all I need. Anyway, I hope that helps you. And I hope it's something you play around with. I don't just follow the rules. There are so many methods now. Let me rant for just a moment. We're done with the video, so if you want to stop it here, it's fine. I'm just going to rant for a minute. So I'll go ahead and say my little ending here. This is Moderate Fanatic. If you like it, smoke it. Now you can stick around for the rant. There are so many experts now with all these methods, the pipe loading methods. I don't like the word pack. It implies too much pressure, in my opinion. I like to say loading, but whatever. The 3-finger method, the gravity method, the this method, the that method. The old timers. You ever watched an old timer? And I mean that, and that's not a disrespectful term. That's a term of endearment. It really is. We're all going to be one day. You watch the old timers. They didn't fool around with all those methods. They just loaded up their pipe with tobacco. That's us. That's we young bucks doing all that nonsense. We've got to make everything a science. Everything's got to be a science. I don't agree with that. I think we're moving too far into the scientific direction in this country that we've forgotten a lot about the arts. And I don't mean, well, anyway, you know what I mean. We're having that battle right now with trade schools and all this stuff. But anyway, all these rules. I don't care for rules. All right, so I said all that to say this. Try things your own way. Don't just do it just because you heard somebody say it. I hate that worse than anything. Don't just do it because you heard somebody say it. I'm a pastor, right? I deal with theology. I'm an old school, old Baptist, old King James Version nut, if you want to call me that. And I deal with a lot of theological things. And one thing I tell people when I'm teaching them is don't believe it just because somebody said it. And, you know, if you understand anything about Baptists, we have the sola scriptura doctrine, if you will, that we adhere to. And the Bible is the basis for our belief. And I tell people all the time, don't believe it just because somebody said it. Don't believe it just because I said it. Trust in the Bible. Well, and that somewhat applies to life. Don't just believe it and do it just because somebody said it. I tell my daughter this all the time. If everybody was jumping off of a bridge, would you go do it? Just because everybody's saying it and everybody's doing it doesn't mean that it's the best thing, and doesn't mean it's the best thing for you. Experiment. Play with making your own filters. Play with your own ways of packing and loading your pipe. The old timers didn't do that nonsense. They just dug their pipe into their pouches until they got the amount of tobacco they wanted in there. And I've watched that many times in my life. There was a man who lived a few doors down from where I live now. I watched him smoke many a time. He never used a method. He took his leather tobacco pouch, stuck his pipe down in there, dug it around for a minute, and there he goes. So don't get caught up in all these methods, in all of this overly scientific everything's got to be in its own class and its own taxonomy. No, forget all that stuff. Do what you want to do. Do what works for you. Once again, if you've stuck around to the end of this, thank you for listening to this rant. I appreciate you being here. It's good to have a new video out. I've got a bunch of tobaccos in, by the way. We're going to be doing some reviews shortly. I've got a whole Seattle Pipe Club collection that I've gathered up, all kind of stuff, a lot of tobacco to review, and some special things we're going to do with regarding tobaccos. Thank you very much for being here. This is Moderate Fanatic. If you like it, smoke it.